بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد عجل. Concerning the issue of Wilayat Takwini, we discussed the issue from several perspectives, and again we want to emphasize that according to what we understand from the verses of Quran and also hadiths is that the capability to do extraordinary acts and supernatural acts by the prophets and awliya is not just their dua, just to ask Allah to do that. It's a kind of gift given to them, a kind of might and power in the person that he does it. Of course, this comes by the permission from Allah. What is the permission? We have to talk about it, and the point is that that capability is like the capabilities we have in our ordinary acts, the way that we speak, we eat, we walk, we do things. It is we as the agent who are doing this, but everything that we do comes by the might and power to come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in different verses talks about idhn and permission and the leave of Allah, so this is not only a matter of a word. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says concerning the Prophet Isa alayhi salam that you created from the mud, you healed the blind, this is not just to ask Allah to do that. It's a creational permission given to Jesus that he can do, but what he is doing, it is not by himself. The might and power is coming from Allah. So there is the essence in the existence of the wali, of the servant of Allah, a kind of a power, a kind of a might, that he does those things, but the might is coming from Allah, so he is not independent in what he does. As we are not independent in our daily acts, in our speaking, in our walking, in our talking, and the other acts. So these are of the same nature. We can understand it by referring to the verses of Quran. For example, in Surah Al-Ra'd, verse 38, in two places Allah talks about this concept. One is Surah Al-Ra'd, verse 38, and the other Surah Al-Ghafir, verse 78. وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلَنَا مِنْ قَبْلِكَ وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُمْ أَزْوَاجًا وَذُرِّيَّةً. Allah says, we sent the prophets before you, and they had families, they had children. Then Allah says, وَمَا كَانَ لِرَسُولٍ أَن يَأْتِيَ بِآيَةٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. And no prophet could bring any sign from Allah without the permission from him. In the second verse, Allah again refers to the same concept. وَلَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا رُسُلًا مِنْ قَبْلِكَ. Allah is talking again about the prophets before the Prophet Muhammad. مِنْهُمْ مَنْ قَصَصْنَا عَلَيْكَ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ لَمْ نَقْصُصْ عَلَيْكَ. There are the prophets that we recounted their stories to you, and some we didn't. وَمَا كَانَ لِرَسُولٍ أَن يَأْتِيَ بِآيَةٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. And no apostle can bring any sign except by the permission from Allah. Then Allah says, فَإِذَا جَاءَ أَمْرُ اللَّهِ قُضِيَ بِالْحَقِّ. When the command of Allah comes, then it will be judged according to the justice. This part is very important in understanding that creational permission, that inshallah we will come back to it. So here in these two verses, Allah says, وَمَا كَانَ لِرَسُولٍ أَن يَأْتِيَ بِآيَةٍ. No prophet can bring a ayah, a verse or a sign. Ayah, if we translate it in English into a verse, so these are the words of Allah that we can find them in the book, like in Torah, like in Quran. But ayah, when we look at the Quranic usage of it, it is not only the revelation, it is more universal than that. There are many cases that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the miracles and supernatural acts also as ayah, as signs, because when a prophet performs a supernatural act, again it's a sign that this person is doing it by the might and power to come from Allah. So it is going to support the cause that this person is sent by Allah. Because of that, it is also called ayah or sign. In different usages in Quran, we see that ayah is used in this concept. I may refer to some of them. For example, in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 259, Allah talks about one of the prophets that according to hadiths it is his uzair. أو كالذي مر على قرية وهي خاوية على عروشها. He was passing by a destroyed, ruined city, a village. Then he said that how Allah, he was thinking about it, that how Allah is going to revive the dead. Then Allah says, فَأَمَاتَهُ اللَّهُ مِئَةَ عَامٍ. Allah made him die and his donkey for 100 years. Then Allah revived him. And Allah says, وَلِنَجْعَلَكَ آيَةً لِلنَّاسِ. In this verse, Allah says, we made you die, and after you destroyed your body into dust and your bones were there again, we revived you to a perfect life to show that Allah is capable. So this is a sign. وَلِنَجْعَلَكَ آيَةً لِلنَّاسِ. You are a sign for people. Or for example, in another verse, verse 114, Surah Ma'idah, Prophet Isa alayhi salam, he said, Allahumma Rabbana anzil alayna ma'idatan min as-sama. Oh Allah, send down a table from the heaven, then it will be a festival, a Eid for us, for the first of us and the last to come. وَآيَةً مِنْكَ. And make it a sign from you. This heavenly food to come, then it will be a sign from you that people will have to believe. They should believe that this is your power and this is from you. So it could be a sign that you exist, Jannah exists, and the food is coming from Jannah. In another place, Allah says, وَإِلَى ثَمُودَ أَخَاهُمْ صَالِحًا. In Surah Al-A'raf, verse 73. وَإِلَى ثَمُودَ أَخَاهُمْ صَالِحًا. The story of the Prophet Salih alayhi salam and the camel he brought. Then he says, نَاقَةُ اللَّهِ لَكُمْ آيَةً. The camel of Allah, the camel is a sign for you. Again here you see that the camel is a sign. And when we look at the verses, there's two verses that we talked about. When you look at the context of the verses, we see that those verses also are universal to include any kind of sign and miracle, whether to be the miraculous acts that the prophets did or the miraculous words that the prophets brought, like Quran. Allah says, وَمَا كَانَ لِرَسُولٍ أَن يَأْتِيَ بِآيَةٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. So there is no chance for a prophet to bring a sign without the permission from Allah. Then Allah says, فَإِذَا جَاءَ أَمْرُ اللَّهِ قُضِيَ بِالْحَقِّ. When the command of Allah comes, this is explaining بِإِذْنِ that iznillah is not a wordly, is not a utterance of tongue, and it's not just to give some verbal permission. It's a creational permission, and it is amr, it's the command of Allah that comes. فَإِذَا جَاءَ أَمْرُ اللَّهِ قُضِيَ بِالْحَقِّ. When the command of Allah comes, then it will be judged according to justice, and it will be established by justice. What is the command of Allah? We know the verse in Surah Yasin, verse 82. إِنَّمَا أَمْرُهُ إِذَا أَرَادَ شَيْئًا أَن يَقُولَ لَهُ كُنْ فَيَكُونَ. The command of Allah is that when Allah wills something to happen, Allah says, be, and it is. So here Allah says, in the verse that we are talking, Surah Qafir, verse 78, Allah says, no prophet can bring a sign without the permission from Allah. Then Fa is explaining actually what is this idhn. فَإِذَا جَاءَ أَمْرُ اللَّهِ قُضِيَ بِالْحَقِّ. So the command of Allah comes, Allah says, be, and it is. Imagine if we want to have apple here, if we want to have grape here. So we have to go and plant a seed, then the seed to grow into a full tree, and the full tree we should wait for the season. Then it gives the fruit, and the fruit should be processed in 5-6 months. Then we can have the grape. So this miraculous act takes place within 7-8 years, for example. But the command of Allah, this is the word of creation, alamul khalq. But the difference is that in the command of Allah, you don't need to wait for all these causes to work in a process of time. Allah says be and it is. You want grape, the grape is there, like what food that Isa alayhi salam requested from Allah. So the command of Allah, if it is going to come, then it doesn't need this the process that we should go through in the world of creation in alamul khalq. And this is actually the main difference between the mu'jiza, the creational signs that are from alamul amr, from the world of the command, with the ordinary acts that are from the world of creation. So this is how the permission of Allah is there. And Allah gives this command, this amr, to the Prophet or to Wali, and to the extent that they have developed and they have the caliber to take the words of Allah, the command of Allah, then they can issue such rulings and they can do creational things, of course, by the command from Allah. Then Allah says is to Isa alayhi salam is takhluqu, you create, tubr'ul akmaha, you give shifa, you heal, and the other things that Allah ascribes to the awliya, or like the jinn and Asif bin Barkhia that we mentioned in the story of Sulaiman alayhi salam, that he called himself Qawiyyun Amin. I am powerful to do that. It was a declaration that the power is in that person, the individual who does, but this is by the command which is given to the person by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah is about, in these two verses, about to say that the man who does this, this man, don't forget that he is a man, he is a human being. If somebody is doing extraordinary act, do not be confused to consider that they are gods. Because people, those who were idol worshippers, those who were close to that culture of worshipping idols, they were very likely to worship the prophets if they were about to see some miraculous acts from the prophets. And we have the record of these people that mentioned that some of them, they used to worship their prophets and they became kafir because of worshipping the prophets after seeing that they are doing such acts. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we talked about in those series that the prophets are not human, ordinary human beings. Why Allah is talking about them as human beings, it is because to emphasize that they are servants of Allah. For example, in Surah Al Imran, verse 79, Allah says, ما كان لبشر أن يؤتيه الله الكتاب والحكم والنبوة ثم يقول للناس كونوا عبادا لي. No man is allowed, no man has such a right, such authority to receive the book and the creed and the nubuwwah, prophethood, and that's might of prophethood to himself, to have it as a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then instead of calling people to Allah, to call them to himself, to say that because I have such capability, I brought the book, I have such powers, then come and worship me. So that's why Allah emphasizes on their being human beings. Ma kana li basharin. So Allah is about to say that they are humans. Don't be confused if they have such power. It is not from themselves, it is a gift from Allah. So they don't have such a right to say, Kunu ibadan li min dunillah. Instead of Allah, come and worship me. But the prophets, they had to say that, وَلَكِنْ كُونُوا رَبَّانِيِّينَ. This is what the prophets used to call people to. وَلَكِنْ كُونُوا رَبَّانِيِّينَ. Be a godly people. Be Rabbani. Rabbani comes from Rab, means to be attached to Rab, to have the smell of Rab in yourself, to look like Rab, to worship Rab, to get close to the Rab, to your Lord, and to have his qualities, to have his morals, his tempers in yourself. So when you look like Allah, you Rab, then you become Rabbani. When you become Rabbani, again Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala maybe is about to teach us that when you become Rabbani, but the prophets are Rabbani, so they do the act of Rab by the permission from him. So if you see that Isa alayhi salam is doing extraordinary acts because he is Rabbani. He is not Rab, he is Rabbani. He is not God, but he is godly. If you become godly, you become Khalifatullah, you become the vicegerent of Allah. on the earth, and you will have such might and power by the permission to come from Allah. And that is what we call it Wilayat Takwini. So what matters here is that Allah says, وَمَا كَانَ لِرَسُولٍ أَن يَأْتِيَ بِآيَةٍ. This itself, the terming shows that the one who brings the sign, the miraculous act is the Prophet. The one who's speaking is me. But you shouldn't forget that this me cannot speak without the permission from Allah. The Prophet is bringing the miracle, but he is not bringing from himself. It is by the permission from Allah. So this structure of these two verses that I mentioned, the appearance of these verses is that it is the Prophet who does, or the wali, or the doer is the one who does it, but there is a creational permission which is gifted to that person, and he does that act by the permission from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is not only about the miracle. Again, when we look at the other extraordinary acts, like bewitching, like the magic. Again, in that, in magic, sometimes, the one who is doing the magic, the one who is bewitching, they are just fooling people. They are just tricking people. They are not doing something existential, something creational. Saharu a'yun al-nas, in the story of the magicians of Musa alayhi salam, Allah says that they just tricked people, so people's eyes were confused. But according to other verses, sometimes there is a kind of impact in what they are doing, like the verse 102 in Surah Al-Baqarah, talking about the shayateen. وَاتَّبَعُوا مَا تَتْلُو الشَّيَاطِينُ عَلَى مُلْكِ سُلَيْمَانَ وَمَا كَفَرَ سُلَيْمَانُ وَلَكِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا. The story of the shayateen and the satans at the time of Sulaiman alayhi salam, that they used to teach people sihr and magic. Then Allah says, فَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مِنْهُمَا مَا يُفَرِّقُونَ بِهِ بَيْنَ الْمَرْءِ وَزَوْجِهِ. They used to teach them things that they could separate the couple. وَمَا هُمْ بِضَارِّينَ بِهِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. And Allah says they couldn't harm people without the permission to come from Allah. Means, again, the permission here doesn't mean that Allah is happy, Allah is pleased with their misguiding people. This doesn't mean that Allah gave them a sayso, gave them a leave to go and misguide people. Means that even the power that they have, the moment that you have a power to lie and to fool people, to misguide people, that's a permission from Allah. It's a creational permission. Allah could stop the mouth, then the mouth couldn't speak the moment that the person was to speak nonsense, to speak wrong things. But Allah gives the permission because this is how free will of man is, and this is how man is going to grow. So Allah says, if they heard, don't think that they are out of the control of Allah. وَمَا هُمْ بِضَارِّينَ بِهِ مِنْ أَحَدٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ. So this creational izn and permission and sayso of Allah means that Allah gives them the chance. Allah gives them the capability to do. Allah lets them with such power to misguide people. So extraordinary acts, to be sihr, to be from shaitan, or to be miraculous acts from awliya and from the prophets, it's a creational might and power that is from Allah, and this is how the miraculous acts are. And the point is that it is a capability in the person who is doing it. But this is originally is coming from Allah, and man or the shaitan is not independently doing that separate from Allah. So inshallah we'll continue. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.